Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The crisis affecting Nigeria's education sector has invariably been blamed on the poor attitude of administrators and policymakers towards not just the teaching and learning process, but also the environment of learning. And this situation has raised the stakes when it comes to parents making informed choices of schools for their children. We're now being joined by Jide Ayegbusi, an education sector entrepreneur and founder of Edusko Com, a private school choice-making facilitator, to look at the role of organized private sector in the growth and development of the education sector. Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Jide, good to have you here. But tell us about Edusko Com. Okay. I mean, what do you do? Okay. You are an education sector entrepreneur.
Definitely.
So that sounds interesting. So what do you do?
So you agree with me that placing a child in a suitable school is no longer a walk in the park for a lot of parents. So what do I mean? Nigerian parents are becoming very busy, so they do not have that luxury of time to be jumping from one school to the other. So they rather sit at the corner of their house to find suitable private schools for their kids. So we are helping parents make informed school choices for their kids, irrespective of where they are at any point in time. We're also helping the schools, double their enrollments at the fraction of their marketing budgets. So that's basically what we do at Edusko Com.
So what are the sort of criteria that you look at?
Yes, we've discovered that rating actually is not the major issue. The major issue is providing information for parents to be able to make informed school choices for their kids. We have all these schools, but there's a limited information about the schools. Parents don't know some of these schools. We have schools that sometimes a few of the parents will categorize as big school, but are doing very fine. But some of these parents don't even know. So what we're doing is to provide enough information, verified information about these schools for the parents to be able to make informed choices for their wards.
Such as what? Like what?
Yeah, such as the school facilities, such as curriculum, such as the school leadership, such as the boarding facilities they have, such as budget, school fees range, a lot of other parameters that parents are looking at to be able to make this decision.
Well, what categories of schools are we looking at here? Is it university education abroad? Because I see a lot of education sector entrepreneurs. They focus only on looking for schools overseas.
So that's where the money is.
And then does this translate into the abdication of parental responsibility? I mean, if my child wants to go to school, so I can just how do they say it? I just outsource that to you, and you get a school. Will I not be required to go there with my own eyes and do my own assessment?
Basically, we deal with private schools from elementary to tertiary schools. So, and that is not to say that parent is expected to abdicate their responsibility as a parent. It's high time Nigerian parents realize that parents are the first teachers. So as such, they need to take responsibility for their children's education. So for a lot of parents that are really serious about this, they want to make this, they want to find this information online. At the same time, they want to also go there to go verify themselves. But a number of these parents don't have that time, like I said earlier on. They are very busy. So someone who works, say, for instance, 8 to 8, how would that person be able to do that? And sometimes you want to rely on your neighbor's referrals. You don't want to do that because what your neighbor considers to be a quality education might not be what you consider to be a quality education. It varies. And what your neighbor's budget might not be your own budget. So you want to make that decision yourself, having looked at all the criteria that you value as a parent.
It's a great business to run, but of course with education, if you're focusing on education, you also have a duty that you must perform. Now, one of the greatest issues when it comes to the education sector, whether public or private here in Nigeria, is the way in which information is disseminated. There's a serious problem with our curriculum, and one would like to believe that a great business like this is also consulting with certain schools that you go into to see how they can also diversify their curriculums so that you are really maximizing the potential of the children that you're bringing into those schools. Because the way a lot of our curriculums are today is not really adequate for the 21st century. We should be learning, or our children should be learning, things like negotiating skills even. We should be learning politics that we should have been learning since that we're not. So do you also consult on this basis?
I totally agree with you that our curriculum is long outdated, even before some of us were even born, right? So we are using 18th century curriculum to prepare our kids for the future, which is very, very awkward. We are going to the 4th industrial revolution, and as such, we must step up. At Edusko, we're not just doing business. We have a couple of other programs that we run to engage stakeholders, in the sector. For instance, the school owners that you talked about earlier on, and even the policymakers themselves. And every year, every October, we bring together school owners across the country and even concerned educators and people that are really interested in the education business. We bring them together and then we invite thought leaders in that industry and even outside the industry to come and engage with them on how to manage the school as a business, how to have the curriculum of the future, topical issues that are affecting the education sector generally. So we look at that, and that is, of course, is what we're doing from our own hand. And I think quite a number of schools have been impacted through this program.
But why the emphasis on private schools? Don't you get clients who want their children to go to public schools? And if you don't get clients who are interested in public schools in Nigeria, what do you think the problem is?
Yes, it's the same old story, Dr. Abati. You agree with me that they say truth could be stranger than fiction. And of course, it's obviously not fiction that the level of education system in this country, public education system, is very abysmal. And that's why parents who can afford private school rather send their kids to the private school. We are a business. And as such, we carefully have chosen an area where we are particularly interested in, and that is private education. It is said that before 2021, 1 out of 4 African children will be enrolled in a private school. So private schools are really taking over. And it's so sad, because someone like myself, I never attended any private school in my entire life. All my life, I'd always been a public school. So at one point, did we actually get it wrong? I really don't know. Like I did tell someone yesterday, it's high time our private sector also got involved in the public education, because we cannot leave it to government alone. We're saying that 26%, like as recommended by UNESCO, should be allocated to education. Of course, as we all know, we're doing far below. We're doing 6%, very ridiculous. Yeah, we're doing 6%. We're doing 7%. Ghana is doing 31%, 30%. Cote d'Ivoire is doing 30%. Morocco is doing almost 30%. Some of these countries are doing above 26%, but Nigeria, as a giant of Africa, of course, is doing far below. So it means that concerned private individuals need to get involved in this game, so that, of course, our public education system can actually get better. Because the truth of the matter is about 70 to 80% of Nigerian parents cannot really afford some of these schools. In other words, they cannot afford quality education. That's how I put it. And if that is the case, then what are we saying? How it seems that the future is actually very bleak, and we must do something about it.
Now, I want to talk to you about Edusko, and what you're trying to do is sort of change our cultural norms, because the fact of the matter is a lot of parents don't select their children's schools based on this scientific approach that you're advocating. You refer to what neighbors are doing. That's exactly how it works. It's a more sort of emotional thing. Where are my friends sending their children to? A lot of people have no clue what the curriculum is, and they don't care. So how successful have you been so far in trying to educate parents that they need to take a more fact-based approach in choosing what school is right for each individual child even? All their children might not be suited to the same environment. And also, with your bird's eye view of the whole sector, where do you see the education sector moving to right now?
So there is a lot we're somewhere, but there's a lot to be done as a business entity. When we started, it was very tough. But as I speak to you, we have over 1,000 parents, using the platform to find schools for their kids. We have more than 3,000 schools across the country that are currently listed on the platform. So it means that parents are actually using it. Like I told you earlier on, we're not targeting all the parents. We're targeting parents that are extremely very busy, and we're helping them. We're providing them that information that can help them to make that informed school choices for their kids. And the number of times some of these parents even call to say we should guide, right? Say, oh, you know what, Edusko, this is what I have in my pocket. This is the kind of education I'm looking at. This is the kind of child I have. My child is has dyslexia, or my child is this and that. And can you possibly advise us on this kind of schools that such a child can attend, and we recommend it based on those criteria. We also prove further to ask them additional questions to be able to, so that these parents are not actually misguided. And in terms of where education is going in this country, I think for public education system, it's still very far ahead, right? So, but for some of our private schools, they are doing very fine. And that's why you see some of these graduates of these schools, alumni of these schools, going out there to even represent the school, represent the country, and then doing very fine. So, but for the public, I think government needs to really up the game, invest seriously into the sector, so that, of course, the public schools can compete favorably with the private schools. Like I said, when I was younger, I never attended any private school, but we're competing with the private schools, and we're doing very fine. In fact, it will be unheard for a private school to really go on a competition with a public school, and such private school would defeat, the public school. And I'm sure Dr. Batuka also this will also resonate with you where you're growing up, sir. So this is basically what it is. So the government needs to get involved, into get involved in the public education system, and of course fund the system, because the sector is actually underfunded.
It's very underfunded, and what that's also done is it's really spiked the prices of private education across the country, making it really expensive for the people. Now, do you also have programs or avenues to actually help parents to find scholarships and bursaries for their children as well, seeing as we are looking at very, very heavy prices when it comes to private education across the country today?
Yeah, first and foremost, education is not cheap anywhere in the world, right? So I visited a few secondary schools and even primary schools in the UK around June. And I was surprised what I saw. Even the best of our universities cannot compete with some of the facilities that some of these secondary schools over there, have. So, so it means that it means that parents are paying for those facilities. It means that education will not be cheap, right? And so, for some of the private schools that we have on our platform, to answer your question, offer scholarships, they offer bursaries for indigent, brilliant students, right? And most times they invite them to come write entrance exams, and once they pass, meet up with certain qualification, then they are enrolled and they don't pay. Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about special needs schools in Lagos. Very briefly, can you tell us the status of special needs schools?
Yes, I think we are actually not doing badly. We have a few investors, education investors that have invested so much into that space. So we have a few special needs schools now in Lagos, and we have quite a number of special needs specialists, who are probably who have experience, internationally, and are now in the countries in Lagos trying to help parents in that. And
line. They can be found on your website.
Most definitely, down in the school.
Anyway, well. Jide Ayegbusi, let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with this interesting conversation. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News Channel. Still with us in the studio is Jide Ayegbusi, an education sector entrepreneur, and he's been having a conversation with us about the state of education in Nigeria and what he does with this agency called Edusko. Now, Jide, so far you've given the impression that private schools in Nigeria are better than the public schools, because government is not doing enough to pay attention to the public schools. But you recall that once upon a time in this country, the public schools, as you yourself have said, were much better than private schools. In fact, at a point, government had to take the step of taking over many private schools and even mission schools. Yeah. But at some point, government turned 360 degrees, returned some of the mission schools, and then more or less just abandoned the public schools. How do we change this? What specifically can we do just beyond, increasing budgetary allocation? And who maintains standards in these private schools so that we don't have what we had in the past when nobody was watching and the private schools just became, money-making instruments? And is there a connection between this current obsession with private schools in Nigeria and the challenge of corruption? Because I see many civil servants, many ordinary people, just because they want their children to go to a good school, as they define it, they will send them to these very expensive schools. And sometimes you wonder, where is the money coming from? Some civil servants have 4 children in UK universities or in Canada, and they are not on scholarship. So what has been your experience? What have you seen?
Yeah, so to start with, most times, when my father was alive, he would sit me down, told me how easy it was back in the days, where when he was in school, like how they ate chicken, good food. The fact that
chicken was served on Sundays.
It was served on Sundays.
Those are special delicacy.
Special delicacy. What we've forgotten is that what we really don't bring to the fore most times when we're talking about this is the fact that our population is on the increase, right? Then maybe Nigerian population back then would be, say, 50 million or even less. But we're talking about 200 million people, in the country, and then and it's also more of young population. So we have almost like 60% of the population as young people. So it means that the demand for education will definitely go up, and it means that if that is the case, much needed attention needs to be paid to how much more we're building more schools, and how much more we're training our teachers for capacity building to be able to, of course, discharge their duty in such a way that the quality of the delivery and outcome, is top notch. So, having said that, I think I agree with you when you said that it seems that a number of these top government officials really don't want the public education system to work. And I also say that it's not that they don't really also want it to work, because it's a function of affordability. So if I can afford a private school, for instance, and I have a legitimate means of paying for my children's school fees, why would I want to go to a public school? Why would I want to send my kid to a public school? So if you can afford it, why not send your child to a private school? I also remember that when I was also growing up, there were a few private schools that were also doing very well, right? And a few parents were also sending their kids to some of. I don't just want to mention names on the studio. So we have some of these schools that are also doing very fine there, private schools, and even while the public schools were doing doing better, some of the private schools were also doing well, but not at the level at which some of those public schools were doing. Yeah. So for talking about corruption, sometimes when this comes up, I try to just avoid it totally.
You don't want to offend your clients.
I just try to avoid it totally because let's leave government function to them to it's not it's not within my purview, right? So we can only talk and we can only advocate for a better education, right? But there's also little that we can do as private individuals. Government needs to set the right policies in place, and of course get people that are supposed to discharge their responsibilities, people that are supposed to execute those policies accountable for what they are doing.
So what do parents actually get for their money? Do we really get bang for our buck, as it's called? Because you have the news of the Kaduna State government shutting down underperforming private schools. This is having paid gargantuan school fees. The school gets shut down. You have Kwara State shutting down illegal schools. So your website, do you just present the information as is, completely dispassionately? Or do you get involved, like you were saying, you don't get involved in rating, but how do you educate parents on really what to look for? Because you can present information, but people might not know the right questions to ask to ensure that they're actually getting, their money's worth.
Yeah. Let me start by saying that as you speak, in Nigeria, we have over 100,000 private schools, right? In Lagos, we have over 18,000 on record. It means that there are other schools that, like you rightly mentioned, are illegal. They're not on record. So even out of these 18,000 schools that we have in Lagos, say over 100,000 schools that we have in Nigeria, a lot of them are not the kind of school that you want to send your child to, right? Some of these private schools. There are only very few, right? Say in Lagos, maybe about 100 schools out of 18,000 private schools that we have that are really doing fine, that parents really know, that parents can be proud of, right? So what happens to the rest of these schools? It means that they're not doing fine. But again, some people have also advocated for the fact that it's good we also have those kind of schools because they are called low-cost private schools. So for parents who cannot afford those top-rated schools, they can send their kids to those low-cost private schools. And there's also this argument that even those low-cost private schools are even better than the public schools. Right, so our duty at Edusko, right, is, like I did mention earlier on, to furnish parents with the right information and also guide them. How do we guide them? For parents that call, we ask them a few questions as regards to their taste, and we try to look for schools that can meet those tastes. And then we also have a section on the platform where parents give testimonials, reviews, right? So if a parent is looking for a school, you check on the reviews that parents who currently have their kids in those schools and those that have also passed out of the schools, what they are saying about those schools, and then you're also able to make your decision based on this. We really, like I told you earlier on, rating is not really the problem in the country. Sometimes in Nigeria, we try to forget the roots and just want to go overboard. So we need to begin somewhere, right? So let's tackle the problem of information first, and then with time we can go to ratings to say, okay, this, if you're looking for a very good science school over the past 5 years, these are their scores, in national examination. So you'll be able to send your child to this school. So if you're looking for a art school, a school that is focused on art majorly, and their students are doing fine in that line over the last 10 years, this has been their result. So you want to. So, but we'll get there. At the moment, we're not there yet. So, and I don't think it's something that. But we will look into that.
And the ratio as well for public to private, I think it stands at 18,000 in Lagos to 1,600 public schools. Now, the government definitely needs to be doing a lot more. Do you think, as is done in America, in a state like Lagos, we should be demanding the government to use our land use charge, our property tax, to rehabilitate our public schools? It's done in the States, in many different parts of the States, and it doesn't sound like a bad idea.
It doesn't. And that means that organized private sector needs to get involved, in the business of education. You also be sad to hear that sometimes some of these guys in the private sector want to also do one or two things with the public schools, right? And they say, okay, I know of this school. The school does not have, say, a good laboratory. I want to build a laboratory for the school as a private business. Now, you now hear someone in the government saying, before you can do this, we need to have our palm greased, right? And that is sad if someone wants to spend his money to contribute meaningfully to the state of education in the country, and you're asking the person, asking for a kickback. So that is also the experience, for some.
That's the corruption part of it. You finally brought to an aspect of it.
That's also, that's also the experience.
Trying to avoid it, but you got there.
That's also the experience with some of the international organizations or donors who want to do one or two things with the public school. So yes, and another thing that I think, another area that I think that government can also encourage private people that are investing in education is also give them a form of tax rebate. So if I'm a company, for instance, I'm investing so much, heavily on education, then I should be able to get, a form of tax, rebate, from the government. That way, other private entities want to join me, in doing that. Yeah.
Well, we're almost running out of time. But before you go, what is in it for you? How much do you charge? And how profitable has the business been? And how many years have you been doing this?
Yeah, I'll start from the last question. We've been doing this for the past 4 years now, right? So it's still it's a growing business. So I would say we are profitable because we are very lean. We're not many, in terms of salaries, in terms of operations. Operations is very lean. So it means that we're spending less, and that's why the nairas and kobo that are coming in, seems to be enough for us. I know how those people that are paying, parents are not paying, so it's free for parents to use the platform. But the schools that want to get listed that are listed and want to be promoted on the platform, they pay, and that's where we get our money from. And then we run a couple of other programs like training for teenagers, for instance, where we teach them life skills, right? Someone mentioned life skills earlier on, right? So where we teach them life skills, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and some of these things. So we teach pre-university teenagers between 13 to say 16, right? How they can prepare themselves for the future, for the world of for the fourth industrial revolution. So these are some of the ways in which we also make. What
percentage do you take? Is it percentage on school fees?
So yeah, so what we do is
I want to have an idea. You never know. I may want to become an education sector entrepreneur too.
So what happens is, so for our training, so we charge money definitely from the get-go. But for the platform, so schools that want to be promoted, we have rates on those. So you want to be promoted on the homepage, for instance. You want to, if a parent is searching for a school, say in Lagos, and then you want a school to be rated, not like rates I need to also put that into perspective, like maybe come first for parents to see that information before other schools, then that's where you get to pay, right? So it's not that we charge certain fee on percentage that parents pay as school fees.
So regarding your business, you're carving a niche in the education sector, but it's a non-conventional niche because you're not going into teaching or any of that. What has that experience? There you go. What has that experience been like, and what kind of support would you require to go even further? In 30 seconds, I'm being told.
So when we started, it was very tough. So a lot of change is the only constant thing, like they would say. But in Nigeria, we're very averse to change, right? So when we started, some of the schools were saying, wow, who is this person? When I started this business before you were even born in the first place, so who are you to...
Anyway, thank you very much, Jide Ayegbusi.
Thank you.
And all the best with this education business.
Absolutely.